Hey, David. I have to get my hellos in. Good morning or good afternoon. I guess we're past noon. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Senate President Jeb Bradley. You look good there. You look good, Jeb. Honorable members of the House and the Senate, to Chief Justice McDonald and the honorable members of our judiciary that are joining us today, to members of the Executive Council that are here with us that we have now sworn in. Congratulations. To the members of our commissioners, all the commissioners and the agency heads that are joining us today. And obviously to our fellow Granite Staters who are watching at home, welcome. Happy New Year. It is great to really be back, and I can say that with a lot of confidence. Also joining us, before we get started, I did invite a few individuals today that really, I think, represent a big part of what I want to touch upon and what we want to talk about. A big part of our foundation, of our process, I think, of what makes New Hampshire really special, really stand out from the crowd. That's civics, right? Our process, our very unique process of state government and how we do things here in New Hampshire. It really is the foundation of our success and, frankly, the envy of the rest of the country. So today, there's a few special guests I want to introduce. Today we have Martha Madsen, who is the Executive Director of New Hampshire Civics, is joining us. Is Martha? I'm looking for Martha. Hey, how are you? Good to see you, Martha. That's wonderful. A wonderful organization that promotes civics all across the state. And Martha came here with our New Hampshire Kid Governor, Charlotte. Charlotte, awesome. Great job. Charlotte Cotty, 6th grade now, right? 6th grade. In the 5th grade, she became New Hampshire's Kid Governor. You're still holding the title, at least I think, for a little bit longer, till we bring in a new Kid Governor this year. An amazingly powerful program and opportunity for a lot of the kids across the state. Along with us, we also have Mrs. Mallory Lankow. Mrs. Lankow, are you up there? With the students from Groveton High School. Good to see you guys. The civics and government class has come down from Groveton to join us today. That's wonderful. Good to see everybody up there. Obviously, want to acknowledge a few folks without whom it's not possible. Where is he? Where's my dad? So there's my parents, obviously, my kids, my family, and the one person who has just given everything, Valerie. Always get choked up when we talk about Valerie. Always get choked up. So, for the first time, I think a lot of people we have to remind folks, for the first time in 4 years, even though we get elected every 2, I do stand before you here in Representatives Hall to deliver the inaugural address. The last time I did it, we did it in a TV studio. I don't know if anybody watched, Frank. It was a really good speech, by the way. I don't know if anybody saw it, but it's actually a really great speech if I do say so myself. But we are finally here. We're back. We're in person. We're shoulder to shoulder, and what an amazing opportunity that is. So today I have the honor of delivering my 4th inaugural address. And an interesting fun fact, I was told this morning. It is the first time in American history, a little civics fun fact for you, that a 4-term governor is being sworn in by a 4th Supreme Court justice. So you're famous now, Chief Justice McDonald. Which is even more amazing considering we get elected every 2 years, but we've had 4 justices. So there's your fun civics fact for the day. It really does continue to be the honor of a lifetime to serve as the governor of the Granite State. It's a great state, and I think of standing here just 6 short years ago, it really seems like a lifetime, right? I mean, given what we've all gone through, given the amazing things and the accomplishments that we've been able to achieve, both within the legislative body, working within the executive branch, but we always have to appreciate that our work really isn't done. Families and small businesses are truly counting on us to keep delivering results. Over the last 6 years, New Hampshire really has become an island of freedom, surrounded by, frankly, highly taxed and highly regulated states. We're a harbor for citizens that are fleeing or leaving their home state in really pursuit of that live free or die way of life. We continue to open up doors of opportunity, giving families the freedom to choose their path that best suits their needs. We've provided leadership that puts the individual ahead of the system. Sounds obvious to us here in New Hampshire, but it's actually quite unique. It ensures that everyone, regardless of race or gender or income, religion, whatever it might be, everyone has the same opportunities to succeed. When other states were slow rolling the vaccine distribution, we went fast. We gave everyone that freedom to choose. When other states shut down schools, we opened them up. When other states closed down their businesses, we kept the lights on and we invested in their success. When other states used the pandemic as an excuse to raise taxes or permanently alter government's influence, it was New Hampshire that cut taxes. It was New Hampshire that said no to mandates, and it was New Hampshire that became the fastest growing state in the region. We threw politics out the window. At the time, there was a lot of political rancor across this country, but we in New Hampshire threw those politics out the window. We followed data. We charted a new course. And as a result, not only is our economy the strongest in the region, but we were ranked as one of the safest states in the country during the COVID crisis. And simply put, New Hampshire is the envy of the nation. It is the gold standard of the states, and it is the #1 place to live, work, and raise a family. Today in New Hampshire, we are recognized, and look, I'm going to brag. I'm just going to tell you, we have some amazing statistics to back up the successes that we've had. Today in New Hampshire, we're recognized as having America's best return on taxpayer investment, ranked as the #1 state for personal freedoms, the #1 state for economic opportunity, the #1 state for public safety, the #1 state when we look at the lowest poverty rate in America. Now look, these rankings are wonderful. They are nice and all, but they do not tell the full story, right? That story of the New Hampshire advantage, what it is. And I admit, I'll be the first one to tell you, it ain't a fair fight, right? When you're comparing New Hampshire to 49 other states, it's not a fair fight. They get jealous. My phone will start ringing from other governors. I get it. But we do have something to be very proud of. And it didn't come by accident. It came with hard work, all the way down, from the governor to the 1.4 million of the citizens that create that opportunity. We are the live free or die state. And we don't need those rankings to just validate our success story. For over 200 years, every other state has effectively been playing catch up. So instead of the rankings, let's look at some of the real facts. Together, over the past 6 years, we've crafted 3 balanced budgets with no new taxes, and we're going to do it again. We delivered full-day kindergarten. We delivered full-day kindergarten. We delivered a historic school choice bill that puts students over systems. And we did this all while spending more money on public school students than ever before. We built a whole new treatment and recovery system, and it's getting results. And when 48 other states, unfortunately, we saw what was happening nationally. We saw their overdose deaths. They were skyrocketing during the pandemic, but New Hampshire bucked that national trend, showing that our doorway system truly worked. And after years of talk, we finally delivered a paid family medical leave that's voluntary, that's affordable, and that does not include an income tax. We made historic investments into new housing. We capitalized on new ideas like the one-stop Veterans Campus in Franklin to support our nation's heroes. It's the first of its kind in the nation. And over the last 6 years, we downshifted cash, not costs, to our cities and towns, returning hundreds of millions of dollars in tax relief for our citizens. And in fact, since I became governor, 82% of the cities and towns in the state have seen their property tax rate go down. Now, none of it's an accident. It's the result of smart management, responsible decision-making, and simply putting people first. So as unbelievably good as this past 6 years have been, and despite our record of success, we do have tough challenges ahead. And the most pressing one that affects every family and business across the state is this looming energy crisis. Summers without air conditioning. In New Hampshire, they can be tough, but winters without heat in New Hampshire, they can be deadly. When it comes to solutions to the energy crisis, we must have the courage to take politics out of the equation. And together, together last fall was an amazing opportunity. We passed the most comprehensive energy relief package the state had ever seen. Republicans and Democrats came together to make a real impact for families struggling with high electric bills, making available $35 million in electricity and heating credits for more New Hampshire families, increasing investments into our existing electricity and fuel assistance programs. Thank you, guys. And with everything comes balance, which is why in addition to these new investments, we continue to explore longer-term options, such as offshore wind or more hydropower out of Canada, expanding renewable solar projects, especially for lower-income families and municipalities. But there's more that needs to be done, and our focus must remain on reducing that cost burden on citizens rather than adding to it. Electric ratepayers are already getting crushed by this national energy crisis. We see it every day. Therefore, we have to reject that legislation that will impose additional unnecessary costs. I vetoed legislation that would have imposed millions in new costs on citizens in the time of crisis, and frankly, I was very excited to be the first to stand up and stop that crazy 17-cent regional gas tax increase that Massachusetts wanted to throw down on us. My veto pen has plenty of ink and will always be ready to protect our citizens from that kind of nonsense. When it comes to energy policy, we can't just follow states like Massachusetts and New York and California. Just the opposite. We have to continue to protect our interests from the policies of other states and ensure that we have the resources needed to make our voice heard. It's critical that we come together and get this done. Everyone from seniors to those on fixed incomes, young families, they're all counting on us to get this right. Now, I'm going to change gears just a little bit. The last time I stood up here in Representatives Hall addressing you, I started by thanking then Secretary of State Bill Gardner. And at the time, it was then Deputy Secretary of State Dave Scanlon. Where's Dave? Hey, Mr. Secretary, how are you today? At that time, we wanted to take the opportunity. We had just come off of the 2020 election, and we took the opportunity to thank the countless poll workers, the town moderators, all those town officials across the state on a job well done, on a successful and seamless 2020 First in the Nation presidential primary. We all remember it quite well. After the 2020 debacle in Iowa, sorry Iowa, but you screwed up. Sure, Governor Reynolds will give me a call. The nation really did, if you remember, they turned their eyes towards New Hampshire, right? The political world descended on New Hampshire, wondering if Iowa's woes were going to follow us here. The stakes were very high, but it was nothing that New Hampshire could not handle. And at a time of electoral uncertainty and doubt in our elections, New Hampshire, we put on a clinic for the rest of the nation in terms of how to administer elections. And America breathed a huge sigh of relief as we restored confidence to the entire system. And this is an issue that we, across party lines, truly stand in unison on today. The New Hampshire State Democrat Party, the New Hampshire State Republican Party, the Democrat-led federal delegation, the Republican governor, the House, the Senate, everyone across the board is standing together, pushing back on this attempt that we hear to erode such an important process. It's a strong message of bipartisanship, and frankly, as strong as anyone you've ever seen here in the state. Because we all know that recently, you have the power brokers in the Washington-driven Democrat Party. They've made it clear that they believe New Hampshire's time is up when it comes to the First in the Nation primary. Washington Democrats are so misinformed, they chose South Carolina to take our place. In 2020, South Carolina, their primary had a voter turnout of about 16%, while New Hampshire was setting records. In 2020, the last time an incumbent president was on the ballot in South Carolina, they canceled their primary, depriving voters of a choice, ensuring that the power brokers within that state just chose who to award their delegates to. That's not democracy. It's incumbent protection, and something that New Hampshire will never engage in. I have a very clear message for President Biden. You can come and try and take it, but it is never going to happen. It is just not in our DNA to give it up and take orders from Washington, D.C. And you've heard it all out there. We're not going to be blackmailed, we're not going to be threatened, and we will not give up. The New Hampshire primary has stood the test of time. It gives everyone a fair shot, no matter what your name ID, no matter how much money you have in your campaign account or the elected office you held before running for president. For 100 years, New Hampshire has given voice to lesser-known candidates and provided a pathway to the presidency for anyone dedicated enough to test their mettle with the New Hampshire voters. So mark my words. Come next year, Secretary of State Scanlon will ensure that the New Hampshire does remain the first in the nation presidential primary. Thank you, sir. Now, maintaining the first in the nation primary is something that everyone across New Hampshire and across the aisle can agree on, but we know there are other hot-button issues where there are clear ideological differences between us. Of course, we can have our disagreements, but it is incumbent upon all of us to not let those disagreements get in the way of individual opportunity. We negotiate, we work together, we give a little to get a lot, because that's the accountability that the New Hampshire voters demand and frankly deserve of their public servants. New Hampshire, like America, is not immune to political extremism, but we must do everything we can in our power to push back against it. The voters this past November sent a very clear message. They want leaders who can deliver. You don't just kick the can down the road or blame the next person in line. You face challenges head on. You invite solution-driven individuals to the table to work the problem. And what a lot of people don't appreciate is that's the fun part. Right? The redesign and the repurpose of our systems is really what keeps New Hampshire on top. The voters of our great state elected a near evenly divided legislature, presenting an awesome opportunity for this type of cooperation. And we have a speaker. But what a great lesson, what a great civics lesson and challenge that we do find ourselves in. The last time the New Hampshire legislature was this narrowly divided was 1871. And as a side note, I think the Josiah Bartlett Center did a really amazing piece on what happened in 1871. If you think the political rancor of today is bad, you should read that article. It is absolutely crazy. It makes what's going on today look like a softball game. It was really crazy what happened back then. But to make sure that we don't let some of those antics of ancient history infiltrate the opportunities that we have today, we know that we can lead by example and show that a well-designed system can produce results, regardless of where the national rhetoric might be. Constituent service is more important than going viral on Twitter. It's been great to already see this legislature's eagerness and willingness to put partisanship aside and work together. Now this year, let's commit to find compromise where we can. Disagree amicably where we must. And always remember that the people of the state are just counting on us to deliver. The voters of New Hampshire do not reward those who yell the loudest, but they reward those who work hard, they roll up their sleeves, and they get the job done. With such a narrowly divided legislature, we have an incredible opportunity to set an example for the rest of the nation. So why exactly is it that we are so good at what we do? Well, the main reason is that it starts with a robust civics dialogue. It's New Hampshire, and every Granite Stater knows somebody who has served in elective office, whether it be a family member, a friend, a neighbor. Maybe it's the planning board or the school board, governor, whatever it might be. We take pride in our accessibility and our connectedness to our constituents. When you run into your selectman at Dunkin' Donuts or Market Basket, you let them know what's on your mind. Lord knows I have done some of my most important listening in the cereal aisle of Market Basket in Epping. It's usually because the cereal aisle is so big and I'm staring aimlessly at the thing, trying to figure out what my kids want to eat. But it is a great opportunity. And we all, as public servants, as elected officials, have to find those moments, those opportunities to be great listeners, because that's the expectation. And it's because of our robust civics that we continue to lead the way in engagement and personal responsibility and individual liberty. Now, I mentioned Mrs. Lankow's civics and government class, who's joining us today. So our job is really to deliver results. We know that. But just as important, we must set an example for those students that are sitting up in that gallery. We must inspire them, keep them involved, instill the principles that make New Hampshire, New Hampshire, putting individuals ahead of big systems. The average citizen is interested in seeing progress on their genuine issue. So this connection between elected officials and citizens, that's really the key to success that you really don't find in most any other state in the country. Our entire system is based on the idea of interconnectedness and interdependency. And as an engineer, I can tell you I think it's the ideal way to design a self-regulating system. It's unique in government, it works, and we should be very proud of that. But make no mistake, while we stand on the shoulders of 200 years of a disciplined process, we're always just one generation away of becoming like everybody else. And nationally, you've heard a lot of talk over the past couple years. This was an interesting story. The two words that we heard a lot on the news, parents matter, right? So while those two simple words seem to be almost like a new concept in a place like Virginia, they've been a central concept to our communities and our government here in New Hampshire since the very beginning. It's not big government's job to impose its will upon cities and towns, dictating this and mandating that and saying you must or you cannot. Big government authoritarianism might be the way they do it in 49 other states, but it is not how we do it here in New Hampshire. It's a very simple formula. In New Hampshire, we distill decision-making down to the lowest possible levels of power, empowering individuals to make their voices heard at the local level where their voice is the greatest. Here in New Hampshire, we call it local control. We've been doing it for hundreds of years, but we're not about to stop now. In New Hampshire, it's not up to politicians in Concord to dictate how a one-room schoolhouse 100 miles away does things or manages themselves day to day. The power lies with the parents and with the teachers and with the partnerships at that local level who send their kids to school and manage those schoolrooms day to day. Our job is to set a path. We provide guidelines, and more often than not, frankly, get out of the way. You do you. Live free or die. It's more than just 4 words on a license plate. It's our way of life here in New Hampshire, and we must remain committed to upholding those values. Too often across this country, you have politicians at every level of power that think that they know better than the individual. They get their priorities messed up. They lose sight of why they were elected. They easily forget about the basic tenets of individual responsibility, limited government, fiscal responsibility. And make no mistake, when it comes to government, there is no greater responsibility than managing other people's money. It's not our money, it's their money. Families across this state have sweat out their paychecks. They work hard to earn a living, and it's our job to make sure that we're being efficient and responsible with that trust. But unfortunately, too many politicians don't consider those fiscal issues. They don't consider the importance of balancing budgets. From their positions of power at the state houses all across this country to the halls of Congress in Washington, too many of them think they know better than those that voted them into office. And as a result, you have big government politicians losing sight of why we were elected, what public service is all about, and who exactly we need to be held accountable to. It's not right to tell a private business what they can or cannot do. It is not the New Hampshire way to force locally elected and accountable school districts or town councils to bend to the state house's will. That's not leadership. It's not conservative, and it is certainly not freedom. I call it taking the easy way out. But leadership is about knowing the limitations of your own power, getting government out of the way, empowering those individuals and families to make the best decisions for themselves. This is America. We are a free country. And we believe in the Constitution, and the Constitution gives every American the right to make stupid decisions sometimes, right? I guess that's the beauty of being in such a free country. And just because I may not like something or agree with what you might have said doesn't mean it needs to be fixed. I sure as heck don't like what every business might do. I might not like what every mayor does or what every school or school district does. But they're accountable to their own voters. They're accountable to their local constituents. And at last I checked, people don't need politicians or corporate boardrooms telling them what is right and what is wrong. New Hampshire will not be lectured or beholden to out-of-touch politicians who are disconnected from realities on the ground, that those issues that are really facing those businesses and families today. Will not be lectured by out-of-state businesses forcing their politics on consumers. Will not be lectured by the power brokers in Washington, D.C. This is New Hampshire. And when we do it our way, we do it better than anyone. The New Hampshire model works. It's proven, and it's why other states are taking notes. This job is much bigger, so much bigger than any of ourselves. And we have to remind ourselves of that every single day. It's time we take that ego, frankly, a little bit of the hypocrisy out of politics. It's time we get out of those echo chambers. It's nice to be in an echo chamber sometime. People tell you exactly what you want to hear, but it's not real. We have to get back into that real world. We have to hear how our decisions are affecting people every single day. I know I'm up for the challenge. I know this legislature is up for the challenge. And I know the people of New Hampshire are going to hold us to it. Thank you. God bless you. And God bless this great state. Thank you, guys. Thank you, brother.